Hi, I'm Fox.
And I'm Zoe.
And we were going to review X3 The Last Stand, but you know what? We did your one better.
It's just X-Men The Last Stand. You can go with that.
I'm sure it came through, like, how unsure I was about the title.
We don't need to do another take.
No, that's perfect. I won't do better. Anyway, this movie hurt.
This movie sucked. It was surprising how bad it was, because it wasn't like... I remember watching this movie, I think once before, and I remember the things generally that happened in it, and I thought, like, oh, it's a decent movie, but, like, the Dark Phoenix kind of, like, dragged it down and whatnot. And that is true, but it's not decent, it's bad. It's bad all around. All of what happens in this movie is bad. Like, every single aspect was done poorly. To a point that's shocking, because, like, characters that were in the previous movies are done worse here.
Oh yeah, characters are butchered right and left. Both new characters and old.
Also, Nightcrawler disappeared.
I was thinking about that. There was no Nightcrawler, and I get it. Alan Cumming, he's an expensive guy, but like...
It is kind of weird, though. That he just kind of, like, showed up, and he kind of, like, it seemed like he was going to be a part of the gang, and then he just disappeared. And there was no send-off for him in the last movie.
No, and no one, like, mentioned him this time. There was no cameo, no even throwaway line.
Right. So, it was just weird. Anyways, let's run through a quick thing, plot-wise on this movie. Okay, so X-Men 3 has two main plots. It has this laboratory that's working off of Alcatraz Island has discovered a medicine that's made out of a specific mutant's DNA that can disable the X genome, and people are calling it a mutant cure. And there's a big kerfuffle about this cure. A lot of mutants are protesting. There's some back and forth. The government promises that it'll be voluntary and it won't be used as a weapon, and then immediately puts it into guns to fire at mutants.
I mean, because government, duh.
And they also immediately, within a few days, develops this, like, flak cannon for the fucking needles. Which is like, yeah, you really weren't planning on making it a weapon, huh? Oh yeah, totally. And Magneto is pissed, and Magneto goes to attack the island, with a bunch of disgruntled mutants, and then the X-Men go to protect the mutant that the cure is based on, and...
Are they? Do they really? Because to me...
No, because remember, Kitty Pryde goes in and grabs him.
Sure, but that felt almost incidental.
No. They sent her after him specifically.
Okay,
she was like, go get him while we hold these guys off, and then Juggernaut went after her.
I guess so. It just feels like such an afterthought, because we all know why they were really there, and that's because of plot B.
Yeah, it's because of plot B. That is that's the bigger reason as to why they're there, but conceivably, in plot A, they're there to protect this mutant boy and to not like, they don't want to. Yeah. The motivations of the X-Men in terms of plot A are part of why it's bad, because it's not fully clear what they think about the cure and how they think about the cure being used as a weapon and what they would want for this cure in the future. Ostensibly, in terms of plot A, they're protecting the scientists in the lab and the mutant child. That's the main thing. However, plot B is the Dark Phoenix storyline, which is done really weird in this movie. Weirder than you may have thought, because it is both very strange and wacky, but also not at all comic accurate. They couldn't choose. So, Jean Grey, as a child, has incredible mutant powers, a whole gamut of them. And Xavier and Magneto in the early 80s go to, like, pick her up and try to bring her to the Xavier school. Um, but Xavier, who's like afraid of her powers and wants to help her kind of properly control them, puts these mental blocks in her head that keep her from using the vast majority of her powers. And the portion of her brain that can use these powers split off into an alternate personality that called itself the Phoenix for no reason at all. Doesn't even have any fire powers.
In case you're wondering, we're not really shown a reason why Xavier would do this to a child.
Right.
Sure, she lifts all of the cars in the cul-de-sac.
But that's
so?
it. But that's it.
Fucking so?
And like there's no we don't hear anything that happens after. Like, we hear nothing about the family. We hear nothing about what happens to Jean in the months and years after Xavier meets her. We don't hear anything about it, so we don't know the reason why.
It just comes off as though Xavier was like, I don't like that this kid is stronger than me.
There may have been a deleted scene or two that actually gave a bigger cause for this, because it feels like that. It feels like there's something missing.
A lot is missing, and it's called good writing.
That's fair, but it's like there's like steps that are like, no, they took a step, they're just not showing it to us, and we can't know what exactly the step is.
Maybe, but in that case, they could have taken out some of the pointless, useless, and aggravating a love triangle bullshit that they managed to shoehorn into another movie.
Yeah, and it's a different love triangle this time, because so Jean Grey at the end of the last movie was supposedly dead at Alkali Lake, but has been reaching out to Scott with her mind powers, and Scott goes to Alkali Lake and inadvertently awakens her sleeping form or whatever the fuck, who then kisses and then immediately obliterates him. Cyclops is dead within the first 30 minutes, which was a surprise to me. I thought he was there for at least an hour.
But you know what? Good on him for getting the fuck out.
Yeah, he showed up for 10 minutes and then left set. And, he had fun little bit of acting, and then he died, and then he left. And I respect it, my dude. I respect it.
I gotta say, through the rest of the movie, his death feels like no one really gives that much of a shit.
Right, because it's immediately usurped by... I'll get to what it's usurped by. So Wolverine and Storm find Jean Grey, but she's unconscious. They bring her back to the expansion. Wolverine wakes her up. She's kind of flitting back and forth between Jean Grey and the Phoenix. She's having a rough time with it. She runs away back to her childhood home. And Magneto, who has heard about Jean Grey awakening, tracks her down there as well. There's a confrontation between the X-Men and the Brotherhood at the house. And during that back and forth, Jean Grey fights, pushes Magneto away, and then picks up Xavier. They do have a little mental battle, and then Xavier is obliterated. So Xavier dies at around the 1 hour mark. So once that happens, pretty much all talk of Scott immediately disappears. It's about avenging the professor at that point. So, sorry, Scott, nobody really cared.
Turns out, only your girlfriend loved you, and she's your murderer.
Yeah, she killed you, so it didn't really work out in this case for you. Tough luck. So, then Jean goes with the Brotherhood on their mutant fighting thing, but Jean's also kind of not super in it. I don't know, it's weird. Wolverine goes to track her down, finds out that they're headed to the lab, and the reason why the X-Men ultimately show up is to find and take care of Jean Grey, who happens to be with Magneto attacking the lab. Also, Angel is in this movie, and he does nothing. Angel does nothing. He does exactly one thing. He has 3 scenes. Technically, he's in more scenes than this, but he has 3 scenes of worth. One is the opening scene, which was harrowing to watch.
Yes,
It was
that was
horrific.
I'll say that's the best this movie got.
Yeah, it started out incredibly strong and then immediately undercut all of our expectations for it. But it started out with a young Angel, like, trying to, like, saw off his wings, his budding wings, in the bathroom while his father's, like, pounding on the door. And it's, like, graphic. And it's, like, oh god, it's really. I'm not going to go. I don't want to describe it. I don't want to describe it. I think that description is enough. But what kind of puts it on top is that when the father, who is the scientist who helms this drug, the mutant cure, he opens the door and he sees it, and instead of being like, "Oh, you've hurt yourself," he's like, "Oh, you're a mutant." And that's where his disappointment comes in. So that's what that is. That's what that scene is. And then
that's his first scene.
His second scene, the cure has been made. They're doing the first, like, proper, like, oh, this is the first treatment with the finished cure. It's on Angel, but Angel is about to take it, but then he refuses, bursts his wings out of this, like, little cage they're in, and jumps out the window and flies away. Flies to the X-Mansion. And then his last scene is during the final fight, where he shows up, saves his dad from being thrown out a window, the same window that he jumped out of, and then he leaves. He does not participate in the fight.
He's never seen again. I actually don't think we see him in the ending.
We don't.
Fantastic.
I did not see him, at least. He may be there. I don't know. I didn't see him.
At that point, my eyes were so unfocused because
I was looking at my phone. It was.
You
bad.
were ordering groceries.
I was ordering groceries. It completely lost all of the attention I put into it.
I started zoning out because I'm like, we're not ending on this wide shot of the mansion, are we? Are we?
Yeah, we
really?
are.
This is it? Fuck you.
Yeah, we are. Yeah. I mean, that's ultimately it. There's details going on in there, and there's some moments that are like, ooh, that's interesting. Like the harrowing first scene. Mm-hmm. There's the iconic the Golden Gate Bridge being lifted by Magneto. I like the Wolverine fight scene in the forest. Wolverine fighting in a forest is classic. It's top tier. There's a reason why they brought it back for Logan.
I liked the Juggernaut.
I loved the Juggernaut. A lot of people gave this Juggernaut shit, but this guy is my baby. Like, he is so good. He's so ham, and I love him so much.
He's fun. He's delightful. Yeah, he's not exactly like the comic.
He's not comics accurate, but he doesn't need to be. And I mentioned this while we were watching. It's like, they should do a Mandarin here, where, like, they have this version of the Juggernaut, which is a mutant who likes to wear a stone helmet, but he has a power that, like, he's very tough, and when he builds up momentum, he gains strength, and you can have, like, a mutant Juggernaut that way, which is also true in the Deadpool movies, by the way, so that's also not comics accurate, and he's just a much, much bigger. But then you can also have a fully comics accurate Juggernaut, which is a guy who finds an alien space helmet and becomes this cosmic berserker, and he's the Juggernaut. And you can have that Mandarin, and this could be a fun version of the Mandarin. This could be a not racist version of the Mandarin. Guys, come on.
It would be so much fun, and to have them interact.
Yeah.
But I'm imagining a wonderful world. And this is the world where we got X-Men The Last Stand, which is not X3, apparently.
Apparently not. Apparently, Fox needed to be reminded of that one. So there's some fun things. I love the Juggernaut. Kitty Pryde was great.
Yeah, it's fun to see Kitty Pryde. I love her. I've always loved her.
The love triangle she's in with Iceman and Rogue is not great. I would have liked to have seen... because there's a scene right after Xavier's death where Bobby comforts Kitty Pryde with, like, a whole thing, and then Rogue looks at them angstily and jealously and uses that as an excuse to run away and get the cure.
By the way, that's what she's doing for this whole movie, is going to go get the cure.
Yeah, she's barely in the movie. She doesn't really matter, which is okay. Like, she was important for the first and second movie. It's fine. But, like, She was, and I think it would have been okay if Bobby and Rogue were there to comfort Kitty, and then Rogue afterwards is like, I can't truly be 100% a part of this. I'm gonna go get the cure. I think that would have worked 100% fine. Like the love triangle doesn't need to happen. Why do we need a love triangle? It doesn't even need to be a polyamory situation. They can literally just be friends. Like, what's going on here?
What gets me is that there's just these little moments of this love triangle that waste screen time, and this is not a short movie.
It's 2 hours. It's a full 2 hours. It feels longer than that, but it's ridiculous. It spends so much time on bullshit, and it tries to tell two stories, and it can't do either.
Did we discuss the final scene where Jean with Magneto?
Oh, right. So the actual Magneto gets in the final battle. Magneto gets the cure stuck in him, and then Jean goes berserk and starts disintegrating Alcatraz Island, and Wolverine with his healing powers struggles up to her and like grabs onto her. They share like a final kiss, and then he stabs her in the stomach. Or I guess it's like stomach and then curling up to the heart. She dies immediately. That's how the movie pretty much ends. No talk about the mutant cure happens after that.
Yeah, no, there's just nothing.
Yeah. Oh, also, early in the movie, Mystique got also hit by the cure.
And it's really bad because Eric is just like...
Eric abandons her immediately.
Guess you're a human now. I'm gonna leave you naked on the floor. Have fun, bitch.
Yeah, like, it's ridiculous.
It's bad. It's bad, and it's infuriating. So and also, it doesn't make sense, because this was a guy who was going to make humans into mutants. Why wouldn't he try to find a way to help Mystique?
Right.
Someone that he has put so much trust in through all of these movies.
Yeah, so let's talk about this. So Magneto's character was fucked in this movie. The last two movies, the first one, I thought Magneto's character was really interesting. We had a long conversation about that. I thought that was pretty cool. The second movie, I thought it wasn't really well handled, but there was something going on. I was like, okay, I see kind of where he's coming from, but he's really, really flawed in a way I don't like. This movie, he's a piece of shit. He is dog shit. He has a fucking thing. When he's first rallying up his like mutant base to go to attack Alcatraz Island, he's hidden at this like little gathering, this like little like town hall meeting-esque type of thing with a bunch of mutants talking about the cure, and then he kind of like interrupts and he goes on a whole spiel, and he's like, but it's like oh, they're gonna use this cure as a weapon. And this guy that he's kind of like, that was like running the whole thing is like, well, this is voluntary. They're not forcing anybody to take this cure. We're not talking about genocide here. And then Eric says like, they never do, they just start doing it. And that's an interesting little statement, but it's also not true. It is factually incorrect. Eric, you were there. You know this. They did talk about killing Jews. And not a gigantic amount of people explicitly talked about killing Jews. I'll grant you that. A lot of people talked about getting rid of Jews. A lot of people talked about just kind of like making them not be here. Maybe they didn't say the word kill, but having them not be around was a thing. Mm-hmm. Like, people do talk about this shit before they do it. That was true back then, and we can see it now. People talk about the fucking Jewish question all the time. It is a thing that happens. It's a horrible thing that happens. You were fucking there, Eric.
It would have been better for Eric to be like, just because they're not using the word genocide does not mean that's not what they're talking about.
Right. Or like most people aren't, but some are, and they will use this cure in that way, like, which is a thing, because as soon as because the thing, like, the whole thing is that like all it takes is for a few people who are willing to say it to start doing it, for the people who aren't willing to say it to follow them. That is a thing. That should have been the thing that this conversation was about, but it wasn't, because the writer doesn't know what they're doing with fucking Magneto. And it's just true throughout the entirety of this fight. In the final fight, against a bunch of soldiers that have cure weapons, he sends a wave of mutants in first, deliberately to get themselves cured or killed, just cause. Like, there's no action, like, maybe, like, having them run out of ammunition, potentially, but there's no big tactical reasoning to let a fucking fifth of your force become inoperable or dead.
Especially when, like, and this is something he actually does, is pick up metal from the bridge to protect himself and his, main generals.
Right, but he doesn't do that for the pawns, quote unquote, he sends
But,
out.
like, that would be so much better to just use it to shield, like, everyone that you can, so they're wasting ammo.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to be worried later on when Hank surprise attacks you from behind.
Yes, it's...
By the way, the Beast is in this.
Oh yeah, the Beast is in this. He doesn't do a lot. He just kind of whinges. He's
kind of nice to see him. There's some good moments.
Yeah,
but it's not a lot.
He has some good banter with Wolverine, but they also fucked up his character. We're going to talk about him next. So it's less noticeable because he doesn't show up as much. But so Magneto, he abandons cured mutants. He puts mutants he doesn't care about into the line of fire for no reason. He wants to kill as many people as he can. He just lies about shit that happened in actual Nazi Germany when he didn't need to.
It's just not. I don't know. It's not good characterization of him. It's not
really
even
bad.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's boring. It's boring and stupid.
The only real moment with him that I like is when he's talking to Pyro, because Pyro is like, well, I could have killed Professor X too if you let me, because he's a little baby.
Right.
And Magneto is like, shut your mouth. That was my husband. Okay, and just
what he actually says, is that Xavier did more for us than you will ever know. My only regret is that he had to die for our dream to live, which is a solid Magneto line. That is the one Magneto line that's in fucking character in this movie.
It's very good. That is good.
But Magneto's just fucked in this one. It's so bad. And then Beast shows up. He is a, what are they called?
Secretary?
Yes, he is a Secretary of Mutant Affairs. In the start of this movie, and he finds out about the cure. He's one of the first to find out about the cure. And he brings that information to the X-Mansion to kind of get them ready about what's to come. And then he has some fun banter with Wolverine. But there's a weird moment where Wolverine, they have some sassy back and forth about being animals, because that is something that they have in common, and it's fun. And it's you can see the connection and the contrast between them. But when Wolverine does the sass back, because Beast starts the sass, he calls Wolverine an animal, and then Wolverine is like, oh, look who's talking, and but Beast has this weird hurt look, and I'm like, why? He's not ashamed of who he is.
Right, in a lot of iterations, he's choosing to be blue.
Yeah, he can look normal, but he chooses not to.
I have no idea if that is true for this, because it doesn't
I don't think it's true for this timeline, but it is true for the Days of Future Past timeline. Not Days of Future Past, I keep saying that. For the First Class timeline. He can look human if he has a thing that can suppress him visually. But he starts to choose to look like the Beast because he accepts who he is. This Beast should already be there. He should have accepted who he was a very long time ago. And what's weird is that, his characterization in the movie is consistent, but it's not consistent with how he is in the comics and how he should stand as a symbol. He is ashamed of his beast nature in this movie because he's also one of the ones that advocates for the cure being available to use because he's ashamed of who he is. There's a conversation between him and Storm where like Storm is like, how dare they do this? Like this is, like we shouldn't be ashamed of who we are. We should accept who we are. And Beast is like, has like this whole thing about like not everybody can hide if they want to escape persecution. That shouldn't be taken lightly. Has all the stuff, and it's clear that it's coming from a place that he's ashamed of himself. It's really frustrating because this is not what Beast should be. Beast should be happy and open. He is the he's the mentor gay who goes and
Yes.
who like he's like the gay history teacher who like starts the GSA at a high school and helps kids kind of figure out who they are and be okay with that,
You know who he is? He is this one teacher I had in elementary school who would always go, Happy Monday, Happy Tuesday, like whatever day of the... And now I do that.
Oh, it's great.
He's just a happy older gay who's come into himself, and he wants younger queers to like be comfortable with their own selves.
Right. And that should be who he is, but he's not like that in this. Another aspect about this I do want to talk about, and then we'll jump into the remakes. This is the last main thing that we chatted about when we watched it, is the metaphor that this movie has doesn't fully work. The Cure is a strained metaphor in regards to being queer, because that is the powers being a metaphor for queerness is something that is inherited. It's not something that they could have changed because the past two movies were like that. But with The Cure, it gets a little murky. And there is an analog, because we talked about this with the last movie, there is an analog with conversion therapy, potentially. So that part's fine. What the problem is that the Cure and how it relates to potentially dangerous mutant powers, like rogues especially, it's a highlight of the movie. That doesn't have an analog in queerness. And if you try to make one, you end up falling really quickly into right-wing talking points, and it's really, really bad. The more appropriate analog is about disability, and about like if you could, like if you're paralyzed, if you're blind, if you're deaf, like if you had the option to cure that, would you? And there's an added layer to this because of the physical detriment it has to a person's life, especially somebody who's disabled, especially somebody who lives with chronic pain, various other things that have an active negative impact on your life. Mm-hmm. That changes the question for a lot of people, especially people who don't have things that are quite so negatively detrimental. It's probably going to be a no. Some people it's going to be a yes. But that's more appropriate to the question this movie is asking, but it can't do that because it's saddled with the inherited metaphor of queerness, and it just doesn't work. I feel like they shouldn't have gone with the mutant cure at all because of that. There would have been backed in a corner that they can't really get out of. I know it's like a comic storyline that's like pretty big. It just wouldn't have worked with the ideas that this movie has been kind of forced to deal with.
See, this movie tries to deal very heavily with, I think, one, sort of bodily autonomy, but also, how do I phrase this? Reach, I think. Not just, like, in government reach, but on personal reach. At one point, Xavier is talking to his class about, like, this man, is, completely, brain dead, I believe it is, but his body is still functioning. Now, if you were to transplant one person's mind into his, would that be a violation? It's like, it's all about these ethics.
Right. Though that specific example was weird because it was used specifically as a setup for the end credit scene, which ended up going nowhere.
Yes.
End credit scene, Xavier, right before he died, implanted his mind into that brain dead guy then, which we know it's the same guy because the same doctor is caring for him. And it's like in like the same room. You can recognize it.
Yes, it's not a good.
It's not good. It's not handled well. They do talk about the ethics of using your powers, and they specifically make mention of like psychics, which fucking Xavier, you cannot say shit. You have crossed any and every potential line of psychic ethics there is, my guy.
You gave a 10-year-old a mental illness.
100%. That's exactly what he did. And he's done worse.
He's done so much bad.
Like it's really bad. It's really bad. And I don't hate that for Xavier's character, because Xavier in the comics has done some shit. There's a reason why he's in the Illuminati.
Oh god, I always forget about that.
Yeah. So there's ethics of powers, and there's like reach and stuff like that. But the ultimate problem with this movie is that, as I said, none of the things it tries, it succeeds at. Every single thing it tries, it fails. So, like, it tries to go for these big, heady things and completely misses them.
It's
and
because
there's
it
nothing
doesn't
we can
know,
really drag from.
It doesn't know what it wants to say in the end.
Right.
It doesn't know if it wants to, take a big stance one way or the other.
And this is the culmination of the issue that we've been talking about in the last two movies, which is cowardice.
Yes.
They had ideas in the first movie and the second movie that they couldn't fulfill to completion because they didn't have the inner strength to see the idea through. They backed out. Now, maybe the writers and directors and even some of the actors wanted to push the envelope, but then the producer was like, no, I'm pulling funding if you do this. Happens all the time in Hollywood. It could happen. Or maybe the director's like, I don't want to pursue this. Or maybe a writer just didn't think it all the way through. It's very possible. But the problem is that there's a trend in these movies where it will go up to an idea, but it won't pursue it. And you don't get a good story that way. And the first two movies were able to barely skate into a decent story with this problem, and this is the movie where it all comes crumbling down. Because you can't have it's a broken foundation. You cannot build a story like this.
Absolutely. It all boils down to cowardice.
Yeah. Anyways, so yeah, there's a lot of problems with this movie, but that means we've got a good chunk to deal with in our remix. So.
Yeah. By the way, Pyro, his actor was different, and it took me an embarrassing amount of time to realize that. Because I actually turned to Zoe and I said, his hair is different.
Yeah.
Turns out his face, body, and whole being is different, so.
Alright, so we're going to jump right into our remix.
Shall I begin? Get me out of the way.
That's typically how it goes around here, sure.
So for my remake, the first thing that needs to be done is take the script, set it on fire, and drop it into a trash can where it belongs.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to do anything with Dark Phoenix or Jean Grey. I just want to focus on The Cure. I think it's still a good idea to open up with a young angel pulling out his wings, start the movie off with child body horror. What a sentence. I also still want Beast around, completely disgusted by The Cure and just resigning.
I like that.
I enjoy Kitty being involved too, of course. Of course I do.
Oh yeah, naturally.
But I want an actual friendship between her and Rogue. Like, maybe it's rough at first because Rogue is prickly, but Kitty's so sweet and she can't help but be befriended against her will. Which I think is the best way to befriend Rogue. Like, that's just how it works.
Yeah.
I also want Rogue and Bobby to have a somewhat strained relationship, not out of jealousy. I want there to be, of course, the self-loathing, the Rogue can't touch flesh to flesh, but also I want them to still be upset over Pyro. Like, the only time either of them even seem to remember him was, that brief moment, less than 5-minute interaction between Bobby and him that added nothing, absolutely nothing to the movie.
I truly forgot it happened.
It happened. Pyro, set shit on fire, and it was pointless and did nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, have something real there instead of nothingness.
Here's the funny thing. I thought you were talking about a different Pyro and Bobby moment that I had also forgotten. Because you were talking outside of the cure clinic when Bobby's looking for Rogue. Yeah. I was thinking about the fight at the lab.
Did they interact?
They had like a little back and forth.
Oh, I vaguely recall. They
didn't talk a lot, but like they had a little back and forth during their fight.
Not enough. Not enough. I forgot about it. That's how bad it was. And you forgot the other moments.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, that has to change here. Like, it doesn't need to be in the forefront, but I want the audience to see that Pyro's actions did deeply affect them. And hell, I want a moment where Pyro is mourning the relationship he left. Upset that his partners didn't join him. Maybe he sees Kitty close to them and thinks he's being replaced. Like, let's get more of Pyro rather than just this, like, eager-to-please baby villain.
Yeah.
So the cure. It's being rolled out. I want Warren, Angel's father, to bring him into the building, not explain what's going on. And at this point, Warren, I want him to already be secretly gallivanting around as Angel, helping others.
I like that.
He doesn't know what his dad is planning. He just comes in and bam, there are dudes trying to hold him down so he can be injected. So Angel breaks free and, of course, flies off.
Fair enough.
I want him to have more agency.
Yeah. It's his indecision in that scene really kind of makes the scene feel weird.
No, I just want more agency. I want him with more personality and maybe to do things. I want him showing up immediately at the school. I want him to actually be involved in things. And I think he should pop in right as Scott is leaving. I want it to be ambiguous why he's leaving. Is he just grieving? Maybe it seems the grief is having him hallucinate. Doesn't matter right now, though, because he's out and we won't see him for a while. He is just gone from the movie. He's not dead. He's just gone.
That actor was busy with other shit, and it's very clear. I respect you keeping that essence in the remake.
Absolutely. And you know what? Scott is mourning.
Yeah.
And he doesn't handle his emotions well.
Yeah, and in the movie as it is, he doesn't really have a place.
Yeah.
So, that's fair.
So Angel shows up. Xavier, of course, welcomes him. I also want Nightcrawler to pop up like, hey, I just heard something about a cure. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, why would he not be involved in some way?
Right.
Well, because Alan Cumming is expensive.
Yes, absolutely.
This movie is called X-Men The Last Stand, right?
Yes, it is called X-Men The Last Stand.
Okay, and I want it to feel that way. I want all the previous characters here with the new. I want it to feel like they are fighting together for their very right to exist. I also want the threat to be the cure and what the government is doing. Like, there's enough material there for the whole movie. You don't need Jean Phoenix.
Yeah.
Gray.
Yeah.
Whatever her name is.
Jean Grey.
You don't need the redhead. In the movie, we already saw they were weaponizing the cure. And they had injection guns ready to go en masse. So let's see more of that. Let's see reality. There are going to be protesters and police with riot gear are going to shoot innocent people claiming they were rioting. Make this a war. Make this a last stand. So Rogue is going to slip out before this goes down. She's grieving Pyro leaving, she feels inadequate, she's tired of having no control over this power that does nothing but harm the people she loves. So she goes to get the cure. Bobby and Kitty, of course, follow, and you know what? Throw in Peter, too. Have more Colossus bonding with his teammates. He has so little screen time, and I love him.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't even need to have a lot of lines, just have him there with his teammates. Silent, strong figure.
Yeah, he's great for that. The moments he's in the movie he does a good job. He doesn't have to do a lot. Just him being there does, it does lend a vibe that's great.
And I think it would really help to show that, like, oh yeah, Rogue and Bobby have more friends besides, each other.
Right. Each other and the potential bisexual in the throuple.
Yeah.
That's Kitty Pryde in a nutshell. Kitty Pryde has got herself in the middle, is like hedging off like several different throuple opportunities at any given point.
It's her main appeal.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is when quote-unquote rioting happens. Huge confrontation, and Rogue needs to do something to save her friends, so she sucks someone's power right as they've been shot with the cure. That brief window before the X gene has been suppressed, and she uses it to get them, the hell out of there. And she realizes, yeah, she is cursed, but her curse helps her save her friends, her family. And maybe it's a little bit on the unhealthy self-sacrifice side, but you know what? It is still progress towards self-love. Baby steps.
Sure. Yeah, you know what? Sure.
She's learning from Wolverine, okay? She doesn't have a healthy mentor.
Yeah.
So Xavier. I want the military to kill Xavier.
Wow.
Yeah.
God damn.
Yeah, thank you. There's some sort of showdown, he's trying to de-escalate, but in the process, somehow he's just murdered. Not even shot with the cure, just outright killed.
Wow.
Yeah, R.I.P.
God damn.
It's tragic. It shows that the military and the government do not, care. They want eradication. They want genocide. I want the X-Men to actually make a stand and flat out choose to be against the cure and the government that obviously hates them. I don't want them protecting a military base because they're against Magneto. I want them to be torn. I want to show war. I want the X-Men to have a damn spine.
Yeah.
And clear motives that don't involve Jean Grey.
Yeah.
So Xavier dies. Very tragic. Everyone is coming together like, hey, what do we do at this point? They know they need to destroy the cure and get the mutant who supplies the means of this cure away from the government. And of course, Magneto, he has been doing his own thing throughout this. He's radicalized mutants and brought them to his side. We can keep Quill, and Juggernaut, of course, he has to stay. I'm okay with Calypso being involved. A little bit, but I want her to be at odds with both sides and at the end maybe create the Morlocks. Just hint at them. And I guess that means I'm adding a fourth side to this story, but that's fine. It's fine. Okay, the movie gets to complicate itself, I can complicate it too.
Oh, that's so funny given what my remake's gonna be. Just
good.
Let's get through it.
As for the rest of Magneto's roster, the Blob. Bring in my boy.
Yeah.
He doesn't get enough love, and I've always just loved him. Even if he's just, a brief cameo. Having Jamie Madrox is good too. Multiple Man.
Hmm?
Let's bring in, here's an oldie but a goodie, Mastermind. He was part of the original Brotherhood of Evil Mutants.
Wow.
I don't think I don't know if he's used a lot anymore.
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't remember this guy at all, so I don't think so.
No, not many people would. He basically just creates illusions. But that can be useful. And it's fun, and it's a little wink and nod to the original comics. I think that would be fun.
Yeah.
So, everything has gone to shit. Xavier is dead. The X-Men are trying to stop an armed and dangerous military force. Meanwhile, Magneto is radicalizing more and more mutants to wipe out humanity before it wipes them out. Also, I still want Mystique to be injected, but instead of Eric abandoning her, he's desperate to get his hands on the mutant the cure is from and figure out how to reverse it. Because in the first movie, he was going to turn humans into mutants. He wouldn't just abandon Mystique, he's going to help her.
Yeah, that's true.
Also, I imagine this is going to make Mystique lose her cool and possibly snap a little mentally. And I want to see her just going feral, with a burn the whole world down mentality. And I think that would just be fun. That's just fun. That's not plot, that's just fun.
I think I think every movie has the allowance of one scene that just indulges the director's kink. I think every movie gets one.
Okay, so then this will be mine.
Yeah, I mean, I clearly saw it. That's your one. You got it. You're good to go.
That's my one. So it's finally the last stand. Everyone's facing off, it's hectic, it's harrowing. Magneto is doing his best not only to protect his brotherhood, but I want him to be protecting X-Men from the military. He doesn't want any of his kind, no matter what side they're on, to have their identity ripped from them. He won't stand for it. In the end, though, I still want Magneto to get injected with the cure.
Okay.
Not by Hank, but maybe by Angel's desperate dad. But he's not aiming for Magneto. He's just, lunging at Rogue. And Magneto stops her from getting hit, but it gets him instead. And it all happens, so quick, there's nothing else he could do. But I just think that would be so poetic. Like Magneto going, sorry about the first movie, love yourself and your powers.
Okay.
I think it would be such a good, powerful moment.
It could be, yeah, for sure.
And again, wrap back around to the first movie. And in the end, I want a victorious ending. Military has stopped, the kid, Leech, is free, Hank is a politician again, and pieces are being picked up. I'm toying with a few ideas in regards to Rogue.
I should be clear, because I don't think we said it during the thing, and it's not, we barely caught it in the movie. Leech is the kid where the mutant cure is coming from.
Right.
It shows up on I think a computer screen or like a file that has like a code name for him that's like Leech, but I don't think it's ever said by any of the characters. So I just want to make that clear for people. Leech is the mutant who turns off other mutant powers. They're making the cure from him.
And I don't think his actual name is said anywhere.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's fine. He was just a MacGuffin.
He really was.
So, Rogue. I think it would be cool that when she sucks someone's power as they've been injected, she sort of gets them permanently. Maybe, just like a fraction of the original power, but it's a boost, and it kind of calls back to the comics when she sucked someone too hard, and for a time her powers were replaced by the others that she had absorbed. So my second idea is of Rogue absorbing Leech's powers dry, and instead of it suppressing hers, the powers interact and she has a way to maybe turn the sucking on and off?
Maybe you should stop saying sucking.
I guess absorb. Absorb is a nicer word.
Yeah.
But I don't want this to be a surefire thing, though. Maybe it just weakens the absorbing. But it doesn't fully get rid of it. But I'm not 100% sold on that. It's just an idea I'm toying around with that could be cool.
It could be cool. I don't know what it would add to the actual movie.
I don't know, but what did the movie add to the actual movie?
That's a fair point. I can't blame you.
All it did was take away my life. 2 hours of it. Anyway, at the end, after the credits, we see Scott again. He's at the lake, watching as Jean, obviously not Jean anymore, races out of the water. And that's the teaser for a better Dark Phoenix movie.
Fucking God.
That's where we end. Cut it. Xavier's dead.
Not even you could do a good Dark Phoenix movie. Nobody can do a good Dark Phoenix movie.
We will see. I will say it's going to be difficult, but you know what?
We've talked about this. We talked about this when we were watching both the last movie and this one. In my opinion, you can't do the Dark Phoenix saga in a movie. Even in several movies, it would have to be a full season of a TV show or like a mini series. You'd have to have a lot of screen time to it if you want to actually properly get the impact of Dark Phoenix, because a lot happens in Dark Phoenix, way more than happens in any of the movies that talk about Dark Phoenix. The fucking X-Men have a civil war over this shit. And it happens in the new movie, I remember that, but you can't get that same impact of it.
Listen, the fucking X-Men are always infighting. That's just their thing.
No. Not to this extent.
No, I know. But this is perfect, though. Because
Scott commits war crimes! That's not a joke!
I know it's not a joke, but it's funny. It's funny when you just say it out like that. Anyway. No, this is perfect. So this teaser, it'll tie up, the 3 movies tied up. The teaser will be for a miniseries for Dark Phoenix.
Okay. My remake. So, first off, yes, I am tossing all of Dark Phoenix. Jean Grey doesn't show up in this movie at all. Dark Phoenix storyline, out the fucking window. Don't need it. Fuck it. Focusing on the cure as well, it is the strongest story idea in this movie. I did have reservations about it because of the whole metaphor mixing issue, but can't really get around it. in this whole scenario. You can try to kind of bring illusions to disabled people, but that might not work. It's a whole headache.
And this is why you bring the Morlocks in. This is why you bring the Morlocks in.
Why? I don't know. I know nothing about the Morlocks.
Okay, so they are mutants that basically live underground away from humans and other mutants. If I remember correctly, like a lot of them were sort of disabled by their mutations.
Oh, okay, that could be something. That's not at all in my remake, obviously.
Right, right.
But anyways, so the focus of the movie is so you have the cure is created. It was created. It was made mostly in secret, and then it's about to be released, and it's gotten very sudden, wide attention across the world. There are 4 main perspectives on this cure. We have the X-Men, which are this cure should be available for those who want it, but not forced on anybody. Then you have the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, which is this cure must not be used against anybody. It is a violation of people's identities at their core. The cure itself is immoral. Then you have the government, which is the cure must be used to take down, starting with certain mutants, going to all mutants. Then you have a new faction, which I'll explain their origins because it's a faction that's spawned over the course of the movie, which is the humans made this cure and they cannot be allowed to continue because of it. They have crossed a line too far, and we can't let them be anymore.
Okay.
We have to kill them. There's no other choice. They've crossed this line. They will not go back. They cannot go back. We have to take them down. The new faction is going to be run by Pyro.
Oh.
So Pyro's going to be... He's been with Magneto and Mystique and learning from them. And as they start to bring in mutants to their cause from this cure... Pyro wants to go further. He's a hothead. He's very passionate. He wants to go further and further. But Magneto has a limit. And Magneto puts his foot down and is like, no, we're not going to go around randomly killing people. Yes, this kind of contradicts Magneto from the last movie, but that could also be like he learned from his lessons. He realizes that his plan in the last movie was short-sighted and horrific, and he shouldn't have done it. But Pyro doesn't want to listen. And there's a lot of also hot-headed mutants who are furious and who see humanity as betraying them. And Pyro rallies them, breaks away into a splinter group, and starts going on this kind of crusade against humanity. The ultimate goals of each of these groups. We have the government. They want to cure as many mutants as possible to stop as many potential threats as possible. You have the X-Men. They want to protect the scientists to ensure that this cure exists for those who volunteer for it. We have Magneto, who wants to destroy the cure and get rid of the scientists so that the cure can never be made again. And then you've got Pyro, who wants to kill everybody. All humans. He doesn't really want to kill mutants, but he will if they get in their way. Those are the 4 ultimate goals. So the movie is going to start with people kind of building strength. You have Hank rejoining the X-Men. You've got Nightcrawler coming back once they hear about this. I think Nightcrawler wouldn't go to the X-Men. I think he would go with Magneto. I think he would end up on Magneto's side.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
Because he's too, he has a lot of shame about who he is, but I think he knows how dangerous this could be, and is like, I'm not letting this be used as a weapon. And then So you have like these different characters splitting off into their own factions. Pyro starts with Magneto. Maybe about a third of the way through, he creates his little splinter group. Also, let's bring Psylocke and bring her into Magneto's side, because Psylocke needs to be in these movies, and she doesn't really have a lot of scenes. She can replace the one girl, the one who can read mutant powers.
Calypso.
She can replace Calypso. Calypso's not doing shit in this movie.
Is that her name?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, okay.
Callisto, not Calypso. Callisto.
Okay.
We could just have that be Psylocke.
Yeah.
We just have to be Psylocke. I'm going a little back and forth on. I think Scott and Storm may go to Magneto.
I can see that for both of them.
Yeah. I think Hank would understand their position, but ultimately be like, I'm not going to go against people's wishes. Mm-hmm. If people are consenting to this, I'm not going to keep them from doing this. But Storm and Cyclops feel really passionately that mutants like aren't a disease. A cure should not exist. It is something that like they inherently feel is like. It's just inherently disgusting to them. They can't handle that. I think those would be the main like people who kind of like cross lines. I'm trying to think of who on Magneto's side would come over to the X-Men.
It's an interesting thought since Magneto's side is kind of
not really. Yeah, they're not really kind of fleshed out. I think it would be cool if Sabretooth was brought back.
Yes, I would.
And then joins the X-Men, and then you have some sexually tense banter between him and Wolverine.
Yes, absolutely. Do you think that Sabretooth would like join them because he believes in the cause, or like?
I think it's because Wolverine and Sabretooth, they don't have the exact same origin, but I think they were both experimented on. Like, I think that their mutant status both put them in traumatic circumstances. So I think Sabretooth would understand on a level that, like, if people want to choose to not suffer through something like that, I think it would be tough for him, but I think he would ultimately accept that, yes, this should be allowed.
Okay. Fucking Christ.
So, yes, like, looking at Sabretooth's backstory, which is truly horrific, and also he is part of Weapon X, I can 100% see Sabretooth being like, I don't want to... if somebody wants to opt out of this thing that caused these horrors in my life, I can't say no to that. He probably has a lot of pride in his mutant self, but, like, he can't decline somebody else being like, no, I don't want this.
Right.
So Sabretooth coming over, I like that. I kind of want to bring Toad back. Like, he felt like abandoned by Magneto after the first movie, and it's just like, fuck this guy, and he goes over to the X-Men.
Oh, I like that. I would love if there was even a line where Magneto was like, I thought you were dead.
Yeah, 100%.
Shit.
I don't necessarily know if we need a third. Well, the Hank coming from the government would be the third there. So we have that, and then it would just be. I don't think it needs to be a huge plot. I think it would just be a series of like people moving to different factions, to small single group to single group skirmishes, to a big knockout brawl on Alcatraz Island, where the X-Men are there to protect the scientists. The government is there to grab the scientists and grab a hold of the cure. Magneto's there to to kill the scientists and destroy the cure. And then we can have Pyro get goaded there by Iceman to kind of like Iceman's like, let's fucking finish this, you and me, and that gets him also over there so that they can take care of him and not have him be unchecked on a rampage somewhere else while they're having this fight that they already have to be a part of. And then they just have that big fucking fight.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And then I think ultimately the end result, you can't, like, this wouldn't take down the government. So that faction can't go away no matter what, unfortunately. But I think the X-Men would ultimately survive. I think they would convince Magneto to let this go. Because I think that the core of the emotional thing with this is that Magneto's position is incredibly understandable, and it's not bad. It just happens to step a foot across a line of agency. He's taking it amongst himself to prevent other mutants' agency, which is what leads to Pyro's position. You know, because then he just starts to go even further past that line. And I think Magneto needs to be shown by the end of the movie that you shouldn't control what other people do, ultimately. And I think at the very end he would work with the X-Men and to fight off the government and take down Pyro. Pyro probably dies, and then the rest of his group scatters, and they don't continue their crusade. The government is beaten down and backs off, and they no longer, at least for a while, they don't use any cure stuff. The scientists work probably either actively with the X-Men instead of with the government to make sure that the cure goes to the mutants who want it, and cure weapons don't get disseminated throughout the country. That would be the ultimate thing. I think this would be a movie focused on character interactions more than anything else. Mm-hmm. Bringing back the threads of the previous movies and really just putting an ideological foot down and being like, this is what matters, and this is what we think is appropriate, this is what we think is not, and just really putting that foot down. In terms of Xavier dying, I'm okay with it in the final battle. I think him doing this like big sacrifice, I don't necessarily know if I want that to be the reason why Magneto helps the X-Men, but I'm okay with him doing like a big thing. Maybe he like in his last, like he like does this big sacrifice to like do this move that like wipes a lot of government minds to kind of keep them off the cure trail for a while. But like, I don't know how that would necessarily go with him dying. I don't know. That Xavier's death could go either way. Mm-hmm. Magneto getting powerless. Honestly, I want him to keep his powers. I think it's important for him to still be a mutant at the end of this. Okay. Because ultimately his position of being like, I'm a mutant, I'm proud of it, I want other people to be mutants, I'm proud of it too. I don't want our identities to be suppressed. I think that's important, and that should be maintained. I don't think that he should be powerless by the end of the movie. I understand the self-sacrifice idea you had was cool, but I think he should maintain his mutant powers.
No, I definitely understand that.
That's really it. This one's not super fleshed out, but like, it doesn't really need to be, because it like the core plot should be simple, because this is just kind of like, here's a bunch of characters, here's their ideologies, see how they clash.
Yeah.
You don't need crazy, more important things.
I definitely like what you've done here. I like the four factions.
Yeah.
I really think that's a good idea. And I really like the crossing of lines, everyone switching sides. I think that's fun.
And you still have like unambiguous villains. Like the government and Pyro's faction are still villains. They need to be stopped. They need to be fought against. You have fight scenes because of that. But I think you can have these kind of like murky lines, like where do you fall with Xavier and Magneto, which is the whole fucking point of these movies and a lot of the comics.
Right.
Like, where do you fall on these ideological things? This is designed to have you actually answer that question while still having fun, cool superhero fight scenes. So there you go.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Thank you.
I also like Psylocke being brought into this.
Psylocke needs more love. She kind of got abandoned by a lot of these movies. So, I guess Kevin Feige now, since you have the X-Men again, if you want us to do this X-Men movie, let us know. I mean, you can't really do it now. Call us in like 10 years. you'll have the X-Men up by that point, I'm sure.
Who owns the rights to do X-Men movies, like movies with mutants? Is that
Kevin Feige does now.
Well, I meant like studio.
Marvel itself has it again because they bought
Oh, okay.
20th Century Fox, so
Okay.
they have the X-Men again.
Okay.
The only property that's really in contention at this point is Spider-Man. It's kind of it's the child of divorce.
Yeah. Well, in that case, hey Marvel, hit me up about like a 6-episode miniseries all about Jubilee.
I'd be into it.
That's what it is. It's just Jubilee living her life, fucking around with other mutants. And also hit me up for the 45 animated The Blob special.
Let's recreate the Blob horror movies with the Blob.
Well, I was going to say that he's going to be a YouTuber, and one of the things he does is mukbangs.
Okay, we're done here.
Good night,
We'll
folks.
see y'all later. Bye.
I'd watch the videos.
Yeah, bye. You gonna say bye?
Bye.